I argued that the Bolsheviks were Russian socialists who tried to build in Russia what the SPD had built in Germany, that it turned out differently, fundamentally because the Bolsheviks had a different attitude to thrashing out political debates, to seeking political clarity from the SPD. The difference wasn't that they had some very special and very highly organised way of controlling their members. So I want to look at this a bit more. Right, the Bolsheviks had a concept which they call democratic centralism, which in fact they got from the SPD. It's not, they didn't originate it. And like the SPD, they understood it to mean that you had unity in action, that when the party, through its conferences or its committees, had decided on an action, you did it together, but you also had freedom of criticism and debate. In a lot of the accounts of the Bolsheviks, you would get the impression that in the Bolsheviks, this unity in action was enforced by some sort of organisational machine, office that they had, which had files, which had records of what all the comrades were doing, and so on. This was not true at all. It was not true because they operated mostly from exile. They didn't have an office. If you read about the troubles in the Labour Party staff at the moment, there are some of the Labour Party staff who are complaining that they have to work huge long hours of overtime preparing files for the National Constitutional Committee to hear disciplinary cases. Bolsheviks didn't have that. They didn't have that at all. In fact, the SPD had more than them, but even the SPD didn't have very much. Until 1905, in the SPD office, they had a rule that any correspondence coming in, after they dealt with it, would be burnt because the party might be banned again. So you didn't keep any files. So that isn't how it operated. In 1917, when the revolution broke out and they were able to operate legally, they did seize a mansion from one of the Tsar's favourite ballerinas, and they established an office there. In August 1917, they set up a secretariat, which was about half a dozen people. Read about the revolution, they say, the Bolsheviks' files, such as they were mostly bits of paper in the pockets of Yakov Sverdlov, who wasn't called the secretary, he was called the chair of the secretariat. This is a very different sort of politics from what we're used to today. Compare it, for example, to the NGOs, which you see figuring quite largely on the left. There's an NGO called 38 Degrees, which claims 3 million members. It has a full-time staff of 37. They are paid goods, professional wages. They have a hierarchy where the interns get paid 20,000 a year and the top guy probably gets paid, I don't know, 50,000, 60,000, 80,000 a year. They have an office to do that. That's where they do their politics. And you have political machines full of people who do politics as a career, as a job. That wasn't the Bolsheviks' idea of politics. They did politics as life. They had people working full time on it. They needed to produce their papers. And how did those people support themselves? As best they could. The founder of the Russian Marxist movement, Plekhanov, when he went into exile, supported himself by writing articles for encyclopedias. Another of the founders, Aksarov, supported himself by being a milkman. Lenin would write articles for encyclopedias to keep himself going. Sometimes they had a bit of money from donations and they could give people a little stipend to keep going. But for them, politics was life. What they did was fundamentally what their members did in their workplaces, in their neighbourhoods, on their streets. It wasn't fundamentally what an office did and handed down to them.